The laundromat on Dufferin Street smelled like dryer sheets and burnt coffee. And on the night everything changed. That smell was the only warm thing left in the world for Liam Connors. He'd been up since 4 in the morning, not because he wanted to be, but because his 7-year-old daughter Nadia had woken up coughing again. That tight, rattling cough that had been hanging around for 2 weeks, and that he couldn't afford to have a doctor look at. Not until the next paycheck cleared on Friday. He'd sat on the edge of her bed in the dark, rubbing her back until it settled, then stared at the ceiling until the alarm on his phone buzzed at 5:30. Then he'd gotten up, made oatmeal with the last of the brown sugar, packed her lunch, walked her to school in the November cold, and gone straight to his shift at the bottling plant on the other side of the city. 12 hours later, here he was. Liam was 38 years old, broad-shouldered and quiet. The kind of man who held doors open for strangers without thinking about it. And apologized when other people bumped into him. He'd grown up in Cape Breton, moved to Toronto 6 years ago for work, and stayed because Nadia had been born here, and this city was the only home she'd ever known. Her mother had left when Nadia was 18 months old. Not dramatically, not with a fight, just quietly, the way some people leave, like a tide going out. He didn't talk about it much, there wasn't much to say. He fed quarters into the washing machine and watched the clothes start to turn. He had exactly $47 in his account until Friday. The laundry cost $6. That left $41. He'd already done the math 3 times on the bus ride over. Groceries on Wednesday would cost around $30 if he was careful. That left $11. He needed to set aside $8 for Nadia's school trip deposit, which technically wasn't due until next month, but the reminder notice had come home in her backpack today and he didn't want to forget. That left $3. $3 for 2 days. He sat down on the plastic bench along the wall and pulled out his phone. Not to look at anything in particular. Just to have something to hold. The laundromat was nearly empty at this hour. A little after 9 on a Tuesday. Just him and an older man doing crossword puzzles near the front window. And a woman with 2 young kids who'd been there when Liam arrived. And were clearly just trying to stay warm. Liam had noticed them almost immediately. Not in any pointed way. He wasn't the kind of person who stared. But you couldn't help noticing, really. The woman was maybe 30, small-framed, wearing a thin fleece jacket that wasn't built for Canadian November. Her kids, a boy who looked about 5 and a girl a little younger, were bundled up better than she was, which told Liam something about her without her having to say a word. The boy was sitting cross-legged on the bench, playing quietly with a little plastic dinosaur, making it walk up and down his own knee. The girl had fallen asleep against her mother's arm. The woman wasn't doing laundry. That was the thing Liam kept coming back to. No bag, no basket, no coins in the machine. She was just sitting there with her kids, in a warm place, on a cold night. He looked at his phone, he looked at the machines. He looked back at them. The boy. Liam heard her call him Teddy at one point. Climbed down from the bench and walked over to look at the vending machine in the corner. He pressed his nose against the glass and stared at the chips and granola bars inside with the specific, serious intensity that only hungry children have. Not the way kids look at candy they want as a treat. The way kids look at food when they're trying to figure out if it's possible to get some. The woman didn't say anything at first. She watched him from the bench. Then quietly she said, "Come back here, baby." Teddy didn't argue. He just turned around and came back, the dinosaur still in his hand, and leaned against her side. She put her arm around him. Liam looked away. He'd seen that look before. Not from strangers but from the inside. There had been a stretch about 4 years ago. Right after the plant he'd been working at. Then shut down, and before he found the new job, when he and Nadia had gone 3 days on bread and peanut butter, and the specific kind of mental math that turns every dollar into a problem to solve. He remembered standing in a grocery store aisle and calculating whether he could afford a bag of apples. And he remembered the exact feeling of putting them back. He didn't think about what he was going to do. He just thought about that feeling. He got up, walked to the vending machine, put in $2, and punched the button for the trail mix. Then he put in another $1 and got the cheese crackers. He held both of them and stood there for a moment, because here was the part he hadn't thought through. How to do this without making her feel like an object of charity, which was the worst feeling in the world when you were already fighting to keep your dignity intact. He walked over to the bench. The woman looked up. She had dark circles under her eyes and the careful, watchful expression of someone who was used to people meaning well and still making things worse. "Excuse me," Liam said. "Sorry to bother you. I got too many snacks out of the machine and I can't eat all of this." He held them out like it was nothing. Like it was genuinely a coincidence. "Would your kids want any of it?" She looked at the snacks, she looked at him. That's kind of you, she said carefully, but we're fine. Teddy's dinosaur went still. Liam didn't push. He just nodded slowly and said, of course, I'll just leave them here on the bench then, in case anyone wants them. He set them down next to her, not in front of her, just beside her, and went back to check on his laundry. He heard the rustle of the package maybe 90 seconds later. He didn't look. He didn't need to. He stood at his machine and stared at the clothes turning and felt something loosening in his chest. He thought about Nadia. He thought about the school trip deposit and the $3. He thought about how funny it was that you could feel broken, also, somehow, fine. Behind him the woman said quietly, thank you. He turned around. She wasn't looking at him exactly, more at the middle distance, but the words were for him. Don't mention it, he said. I'm not going to be able to mention it to anyone, she said, and then she laughed. Just a short, tired sound, but real. I'm Vera. Something about the way she said it, not as an introduction exactly, more like she was just remembering who she was, made Liam set down the dryer sheet he'd been fiddling with and sit back down on the bench, a few feet away. Liam, he said. The girl on her other side stirred but didn't wake up. Teddy was eating crackers one at a time, very carefully, making each one last. Is there a shelter nearby? Liam asked. He kept his voice low, just a question, no weight to it. Vera nodded slowly. The one on Bloor's full. We tried at 6. She paused. We've been sort of moving between places. Staying warm where we can. How long? He said. She was quiet for a moment. 8 days. Liam let that land. 8 days. November in Toronto. 2 kids. We had an apartment, she said. And he could tell she'd explained this story before. Maybe to shelter workers, maybe to herself, and it had worn smooth with the telling. The landlord sold the building. New owner wanted to renovate. The notice was legal, technically. I had 60 days, and I tried to find something else, but... She spread one hand slightly. You know what the rental market's like right now. He knew. He paid $1,100 a month for a 1-bedroom, and considered himself lucky. I've got a job, she added quickly. And there was something almost defensive in it, the same thing he'd heard in his own voice 4 years ago, when he'd had to explain his situation to anyone. I start next week at a distribution warehouse out in Etobicoke. It's full-time. I just need to get through this week. What about family? He asked. My sister's in Sudbury. I'm trying not to call her. She said it like a rule she'd made for herself. Why? Because if I call her she'll want me to move back there. She looked at him sideways. And my kids were born here. Everything they know is here. Teddy starts school in September and I want him to go to school here. She took a breath. I just need 1 week. Liam turned this over in his mind. He thought about the $41. He thought about the couch in his living room, which was where he slept most nights anyway, because Nadia had taken over the bedroom. And he'd never gotten around to reclaiming it. It wasn't much of a couch. It was old, and one of the cushions had a broken spring, and he covered it with a blanket so no one would know. But it was warm. He thought about what he would have wanted 4 years ago. I have a couch, he said, and a sleeping bag. My apartment's small. It's a 1-bedroom over on Ossington, but it's warm and there's a bathroom and I can make up something on the floor for the kids. He paused. I want to be clear, this isn't. He stopped. Because he didn't know how to finish that sentence without it sounding strange. And strange was the last thing he needed to sound. But Vera was watching him with the particular attention of someone who had spent 8 days reading people, learning quickly who meant well and who didn't. You've been there, she said, not a question. 4 years ago, he said. Not as long as 8 days. But yeah. She looked at her kids. Teddy had finished the crackers and had gone back to walking his dinosaur along his knee. The girl, Petra, Vera had called her once, quietly, when she'd shifted in her sleep, was still out. I can't ask you to do that, Vera said. I know, Liam said. I'm offering. She looked at him for a long moment. The older man with the crossword puzzle wasn't paying attention. The dryers hummed. Outside a bus rolled by on Dufferin, its windows lit yellow against the dark. My kids will be up at 6, she said finally. Mine too, he said. She nodded slowly, just once, but it was enough. Getting everyone onto the bus was a whole thing. Teddy wanted to bring all 3 of his dinosaurs, but only had pockets for 2, which led to a brief crisis that Petra, now wide awake and deeply opinionated, tried to resolve by putting the 3rd dinosaur in her own pocket, which Teddy felt was not a satisfactory solution. Vera managed the negotiation with the weary expertise of someone who had been mediating dinosaur disputes for most of her adult life. Liam collected his laundry bag and held the door. On the bus, Teddy sat next to the window and breathed fog onto the glass, and drew shapes in it with one finger. Petra fell asleep again on Vera's lap within 4 minutes. Liam sat across the aisle and read the transit system notice about not eating on the bus. which he'd read probably 300 times, and still somehow always read again. He texted the woman who watched Nadia after school, his neighbor, Greta, who was 71 and made excellent pierogi, and had been a reliable constant in his life for 3 years, to let her know he was on his way. Greta texted back, "Okay, and I fed her already. Pasta, she ate 2 plates. I am not worried, but you should know. She coughed a lot at dinner. Maybe doctor soon?" He texted back, "Yeah, working on it. Thank you, Greta." De rien, she sent, which was the French she'd grown up with leaking through. She always slipped into it when she was being sincere. The apartment on Ossington was on the 3rd floor of a narrow brick building that had no elevator and a staircase that groaned on the 2nd step from the top, without fail, every single time. Liam had learned to step over it. He pointed it out to Vera on the way up and she stepped over it without hesitation, Petra on her hip, already adapting. Nadia was on the couch in her pajamas, watching a nature documentary about Arctic foxes when they came in. She looked at Vera. She looked at the 2 kids. She looked at Liam with the calm, evaluating expression she'd been deploying since she was about 4 years old, the one that made him feel like she was the parent. "Hi," she said. "Hi," Teddy said, still holding all 3 dinosaurs after all. "Are those real?" Nadia asked, nodding at them. "No," Teddy said seriously. "But I named them like they are." Nadia considered this. "Okay," she said, and scooted over on the couch to make room. Liam exhaled slowly. He made tea and found some crackers, and a block of cheddar in the fridge that he cut into slices. He dug the sleeping bag out of the closet and found 2 extra blankets folded on the shelf above it. He set Nadia up in her bed early. She went without argument, which meant she was tired, and gave Vera the couch, spread with the cleanest blanket he had. He made up a spot on the floor for Teddy and Petra with the sleeping bag, and the couch cushions arranged into a sort of nest. And Teddy thought this was genuinely the greatest sleeping arrangement he'd ever encountered, and said so at some length. Vera stood in the small kitchen doorway while Liam rinsed the mugs and said, "I want you to know I'm not someone who makes a habit of this." "Of what?" he said. "Of needing help." "I know," he said. He turned off the tap. "I didn't think you were." She leaned against the doorframe. She looked, for the first time all night, like someone who might actually be able to sleep. "Why did you help us?" she asked. "You don't know us." Liam thought about it. He thought about the vending machine and Teddy's nose pressed against the glass, and about a grocery store in Scarborough 4 years ago, and a bag of apples, and about the fact that someone had helped him then. A co-worker named Bryce, who'd pushed a folded-up $200 bill across a breakroom table and said, "Don't make it weird." And that Liam had thought about that moment probably once a week ever since. "Someone did it for me," he said. "So I guess I was just waiting for my turn." Vera didn't say anything. She nodded, once, and went to lie down on the couch with her kids curled around her. Liam made up his spot on the floor beside the kitchen, with his winter coat as a pillow, which he'd done before in worse circumstances, and listened to the apartment, settle into the particular quiet of a place where people are finally resting. He could hear the Arctic Fox documentary still going faintly through Nadia's door. She'd fallen asleep with it on. He lay there for a while, looking at the ceiling. He thought about the $41. He thought about the $3. He thought about how the number of dollars had not changed, and how somehow, lying on his kitchen floor in a coat that smelled like the bottling plant, he felt less alone than he had in quite a long time. Vera was up before 6, as promised. Liam woke to the sound of her moving quietly in the kitchen and for a disoriented moment couldn't figure out what the sound was, and then he could, and he got up. She'd found the coffee. She looked at him apologetically. "Use whatever you want," he said. She poured him a mug. They stood in the kitchen in the early morning gray and drank coffee while the kids slept, and the radiator knocked. "I have a number," she said. She'd been thinking about something. He could tell from the way she said it. Organized. "A housing support line. My friend texted it to me last week, but I didn't want to call because I kept thinking we'd figure it out. I'll call today." "Okay," he said. "And I have the job. Starting Monday." She wrapped both hands around the mug. "I just have to get through the days until then." "You can stay here," Liam said. She looked at him. "I mean it," he said. "The couch isn't much, but it's warmer than the alternative." She shook her head slowly. "I can't put you and your daughter out like that. Nadia won't mind." Which was possibly the truest thing he'd said in weeks. He'd already mentally run a short version of this conversation with his daughter and had a fairly clear prediction of her response, which was, "Yeah, okay. Teddy said the T-Rex is named Gerald. I think that's good." Vera almost smiled. It started and then stopped, like she was still deciding if she was allowed to. "One more night," she said. "2 at the most, and I'll do groceries. I still have a little on my transit card and some cash." "You don't have to." "I want to," she said. "I need to." He understood that. He'd needed to 4 years ago. He'd paid Bryce back the $250, which was more than he'd been given, and Bryce had taken it without making it a moment, which was the kindest thing he could have done. "Okay," Liam said. They drank their coffee outside. The November sky was lightening from black to a dark flat gray. Somewhere in the building, someone else's alarm went off. Vera stayed 3 nights. She made good on the groceries, showed up on Wednesday afternoon with 2 bags, and a receipt she offered to show him, which he waved away. She cooked pasta with a tomato sauce that was better than anything Liam had managed in recent memory, which was a low bar, he admitted, but still. Nadia ate 2 bowls and asked if Vera could teach her how to make it. Vera said yes. The housing support line came through faster than any of them expected. A caseworker called back Thursday morning and told Vera about a transitional housing unit that had opened up in Parkdale. Not permanent, but a real apartment, subsidized, available the following Monday. Vera called Liam at the plant during his break to tell him. He was standing in the parking lot in the cold, eating a sandwich he'd made that morning, and when she told him he just said, "Yeah?" And she said yeah, and they were both quiet for a second. "That's good," he said. "That's really good," she said. Nadia, when she heard, was quiet for a moment and then said, "Does that mean Teddy and Petra won't sleep in the nest anymore?" "No baby," Liam said, "but they'll be safe." She thought about this. "Then, can we visit them?" he said he'd ask. Moving day was Sunday. Vera didn't have much. A few bags, the kids' things, a box of items she'd kept in storage at her friend's place in Etobicoke that the friend dropped off. Liam helped carry it up to the unit on Roncesvalles, 3 floors, no elevator. Teddy insisted on carrying his own backpack and tripped on the 2nd floor landing, and recovered with great dignity, barely missing a beat. The apartment was small and smelled like fresh paint, and the radiator clanged, which Teddy immediately decided was the apartment communicating in code. Petra stood in the middle of the living room and spun around twice, taking it in. Vera stood by the window looking out at the street. Liam set down the last box and stood in the doorway. "You're going to be okay," he said. It wasn't something he said lightly. He'd had it said to him at low moments, said by people who couldn't possibly know, and it had felt hollow. But standing here, watching Teddy explain the radiator code to his sister, he meant it. Vera turned from the window. She looked like she was about to say something practical, something about groceries or transit routes, or the first day of work tomorrow. Then she didn't. She crossed the room and hugged him, quickly, one arm around his shoulders and stepped back. "Thank you," she said. "I told you. I know what you told me," she said. "I'm thanking you anyway." He nodded. He looked at the kids. He looked at the window and the November street below and the yellow light of the apartment behind the glass. "Monday," she said. "First shift. I'll text you. You don't have to." "I want to," she said, and there was that word again. Want, like a small act of choosing. Like something that hadn't been available for a while and now was. He said goodbye to Teddy and Petra, who were already deep into the radiator investigation and barely registered his departure, which he took as a good sign. He walked down the stairs, out onto Roncesvalles, and stood for a moment on the sidewalk while the cold settled around him. $41, $3. Those numbers were still real. Friday had come and gone, and he was back at zero-sum math, same as always, same as next month. Nothing about that had changed, but something else had. He started walking toward the bus stop, his breath making small clouds in the November air. Monday morning, just after 7, his phone buzzed. First day. Wish me luck. He was in the middle of packing Nadia's lunch, same as always, sandwich, apple, the good crackers she liked. And he set the bread down and typed back, "You don't need it, but good luck anyway." He put the phone in his pocket and finished making the lunch, and called Nadia to get her coat, and she came out of the bedroom with her hair half done and one shoe already on, which was about par. He helped her with her coat buttons. She looked up at him. "Is Vera okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "She's good." Nadia nodded, satisfied, and went to find her other shoe. Liam stood in the hallway for a moment. It was 7:10. He had a bus to catch, a shift to get to, a paycheck that was 6 days away. He had a daughter who asked if people were okay the way some kids asked about the weather. Just automatically, just because it mattered. He grabbed his jacket off the hook. Sometimes it starts with that. Not with anything grand or planned. Not with having enough money or enough time or enough anything. Just with a kid pressing his nose to a vending machine glass, and another person who happened to notice, and a decision made in the space between looking and looking away. That's usually how it starts.